Almost every golfer I know would like to spend a session on the practice tee with Tiger Woods. I mean, learn from the best. Business people I know always dream about having dinner with Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. Just a lot to learn from guys like that. Musicians want to hang out with Bono. Sailors, they all want to get on a boat sometime with Dennis Conner or Russell Coutts. But those of us who are Christ followers, I think we should probably imagine what it would be like to be able to sit down to dinner with Jesus Christ and just learn from the Master. Learn from the one who would walk into various social settings and just have a beam on who needed attention, who needed grace, who needed forgiveness, who needed a word of encouragement. And he would walk right across the room in those settings, and he would offer it freely and lovingly, compassionately. We have the opportunity to learn from the Master, and we can become the kinds of people who walk across rooms just like he did.
Yeah, that's good. Some shooting on the other goal. You're tapping it right. Put your foot.
A lot of people I talk to get all freaked out when they hear the word evangelism. They think they have to master this massive amount of apologetic information. They think they have to have a different personality than God gave them. They think that it's just some formidable challenge that they could never rise to. And so often I find that it's the short, rather accessible little steps or walks or deeds that you do. It's not giving long speeches, it's mostly about friendship. It's not backing someone into a corner, it's just kind of pointing to Christ in ways that are natural for you. And I think if more people would do just the small thing that they can do, take a walk here, stretch out an arm here, say a word here, live your faith every day in a humble and kind of genuine way, I think a lot of people would find that they would be touching a lot more lives than they think.
You're tapping it right.
I remember when our son Todd wanted to play soccer, and we signed him up for a Park District Soccer League, and then we went to his first practice. I was anxious to see what kind of coach he would have. And the minute I met Brian, I could tell Todd was going to have a ball on this team.
My oldest son, Jason, at 5 years old, decided he wanted to play soccer. At that point, I decided to start coaching soccer, and Bill's son, Todd, ended up on my team, and that's how the relationship started.
Brian was an area business guy. He ran an excavation company and filled with energy, loved soccer, loved to train and inspire young guys. And I knew Todd was in for quite a ride if he was going to play for Brian.
You got to make practice interesting. It's something that could be monotonous if you don't do the things right. So we'd intermingle games with the practices.
Well, I did what other soccer parents do when their kids are out playing soccer. Len and I and Shauna would stand on the sidelines and cheer on Todd and his teammates. And there were other Willow Creek parents whose children were playing in that same league. And so it became very comfortable for us to just stand with other Willow Creekers. And we discussed things that were going on in the church and in our relationships while our kids were playing soccer. And then one day, when the game ended, I was going to turn and walk with this group of Creekers back to our cars. And I had just this kind of prompting from the Holy Spirit as I saw Brian out in the distance picking up soccer balls and putting cones and equipment away all by himself. The prompting I got was go out and help that guy. Walk out to the center of the soccer field and offer to help him, shake his hand, maybe you could get to know him a little bit. And I remember there was just a moment where I had to make a decision if I was going to stay in that little comfortable group and walk back to the cars with the other church people, or kind of venture out and pay attention to that prompting that I figured was from God.
When I first met Bill, our relationship was kind of surface relationship where we'd talk about the boys and the games and how the team was doing.
After that, it would be quite common for me to help him pick up balls after practice or after a game, and we got just a little friendship started. And one day, because we had a holiday service coming up at Willow, I thought, well, why not just take a shot?
And kind of subtly invited me to Willow, which at that point in my life, I wasn't really interested in.
Brian gave me a very clear-cut no when I invited him to church. It wasn't disrespectful or unkind, but it was direct and unequivocating. No, I'm not interested in that. You don't need to bring it up a second or a third time, was kind of the indication he gave to me. We can be friends on the soccer field. Don't drag God or church into it. And I thought, I'm going to have to be a little careful. There's something going on here that I don't know about, but I have to respect his sensitivity to my asking him questions about church.
Up till about 18, till I went away to college, I was a tender of a church and an avid reader of the Bible. I kind of fell away, and it didn't seem to matter anymore. So that's why my interest wasn't there.
I think if I would have brought the subject up again to Brian, if I would have maybe come on too strong or continually repeated my invitation for him to come to church, I think it would have created a chasm and probably put our friendship at risk. Just wasn't the right thing to do.
When Bill's son Todd left the program, my relationship with Bill kind of was sidelined temporarily. At that point in my life, about 3 years later, my marriage was kind of on the rocks. I had made an investment in a business that totally demolished me financially.
When my assistant, Gene, told me that Brian Anderson was trying to get in touch with me, I remember not even remembering exactly who that was. And I thought for a moment, wait a minute, the only Brian Anderson I even recollect was, I believe, the man who used to coach Todd in soccer. And I thought, he coached my son for 3 years, and he's only asking for a conversation for me. The least I can do to honor what he did for my son was to agree to meet with him. So I said, come on over and let's meet.
At my low point, when I was going through the potential divorce and potential bankruptcy, I kind of sat down by myself and said, who do I have to turn to on this? I knew my family wasn't a Christian family, so I really didn't have anybody to turn to, and I wanted to go to an outsider, somebody who had a view of what was of life other than what I had. And that's the reason I turned to Bill.
About 5 minutes into the conversation with Brian, he just unloaded about what was happening in his life, and it was not pretty. He had serious marital issues going on, strain in the family. And I remember looking across my desk thinking, this is a guy in deep, deep trouble. And then he got to that point and he said, what do you think I should do? I'm at the end of my rope. What should I do? And that's when I got another prompting from the Spirit. You know, you can go two ways in a moment like that. You can sympathize and empathize and say, what a terrible situation, and let's pray, and I'll try to wrap my arms around you and encourage you somehow. And that's certainly a valid approach to take in certain circumstances. But there's another, maybe higher risk approach, and I am very careful whenever I use it. I want to make sure that God's guiding me in this, but I felt God was. And I said, Brian, I think this trouble is all of your making.
He came straight on and told me the truth, in which I think that's one thing I was looking for.
Sizing up the kind of guy he was, he's a tough guy. He's from the south side of Chicago. And I thought he might need kind of that straight shot of truth right between the eyes.
If I would have gone to anybody else, they would have sympathized with me and said, here. But he told me straight face, you made a mistake in the way you were going in life. He says you were looking at the world and not at God.
I could tell that my response began a kind of breaking process in him. He sat there quietly. He could have gotten up and stormed out, but he just let it soak in. And I think we met 3 times. We kind of followed up on it a few times. And then after that, he just sort of faded from the scene. I didn't know if he was just going to go back and jump into the same kind of life that he was in, or if he was going to try to maybe take a new approach. I just didn't know, and lost track of him for many, many months after that.
Well, it wasn't a overnight process by any means. The 180 that I took was a process that took probably a good year to go through. I went home one night and I was reading the Bible, and I said it's time for me to make the move. I mean, totally commit myself to Christ and be who I should be and who the Lord wanted me to be. I knew at that moment my life would change forever.
Yeah, the new Brian, it's just unbelievable. I mean, when you knew the old one, and now you see the new one.
My life has gone through an unbelievable change. I met a woman around 5 years ago who I eventually brought to Christ. Went through the whole marriage ministry program. Both my wife and I are involved in the marriage ministry right now. That's how much we liked it, and that's how much it did for us.
They're helping other couples build Christ-centered marriages, and it just blows my mind again that Brian Anderson would be involved in something like that. And then more recently, he's developed a heart for the under-resourced.
I'm in a construction business, and we do a lot of work in the inner city, and God's been prompting me to start building houses for the under-resourced.
He could be making a lot more money doing other kinds of projects. I never get tired of watching God transform a human life.
For a long time in my life, I used to say, hey, God, thank you for leading me to Bill and bringing me to Willow Creek, because it's totally changed my life. Totally changed my life.
Sometimes when it's difficult for me to leave a comfortable circle of Christians that I'm having fellowship with to maybe take a walk across a room to try to extend a hand to someone new, I think of what the New Testament says in the book of Philippians, how Christ, in the ultimate circle of comfort, if you will, the Trinity in heaven, receives the commission from his Father to sort of walk all the way across the cosmos, come to planet Earth, put on human flesh and live amongst us, and talk about entering the zone of the unknown. And it was quite predictable what was going to happen. He was not going to be accepted by everyone, and he paid a huge price for that walk and for that plunge into the unknown, motivated by love and more concerned about the well-being of people than his own well-being. It's very touching to me and inspiring, and I want to be a person like that. I'm a long way from being a person like that consistently. I get bursts of understanding here and there. And when the Spirit prompts me and I act in the fashion that Christ acted, as I read it in the Bible, there's something in me that goes, you were born for this. This is something you ought to be doing. This is you at your best right here.
I realize at this point in my life that it was because one person took the time to walk across a soccer field and show interest in me that I'm where I'm at in God's kingdom today.